The year is 2004. America is smack dab in the middle of the Bush presidency, and this can be reflected and shown in music of the times. Albums such as NoFX's War on Airism and Sum 41's Chuck were extremely critical of the presidency, and it was clear a musical uprising was in the works. NoFX especially using their own label Fat Wreck to start protests and campaigning against the president, and releasing compilation albums under the titles Rock Against Bush Volumes 1 and 2.
We all know George Bush is an imbecile. He loves, but he hates homosexuals. We're sick and tired.
It probably sounds like I'm ignoring something, right? As if I'm leaving something out. One album that, changed rock music and the history of music and still gets major radio play to this day. Oh, yeah, Crazy Hits by... Obviously, I'm kidding, and we're talking about the legendary album American Idiot by Green Day. This thing is almost 17 years old, and being ranked as one of the top 500 albums of all time by the Rolling Stone, it's pretty safe to say this album changed music forever. Unfortunately, we're not here to talk about that today. If you'd like a good gush session for this thing, go check out Crash Thompson's review, it's pretty great stuff. Today, we're going to tell the tale of the lost Green Day album that would have originally taken American Idiot's place. Completely finished and just lying in the studio, the tapes were mysteriously stolen one day. To this day, they've never been bootlegged online, and the only thing we've heard from this album are some live tracks and repurposed songs. This is the story of Green Day's Cigarettes and Valentines. Just so this video makes sense to anybody who isn't very accustomed to Green Day, let's give a little background. Green Day's discography goes along a little something like this, but all we need to know about for today are these albums, ones I consider the golden age of the band. These include Kerplunk, Dookie, Insomniac, Nimrod, and finally ending with Warning. Dookie was one of, if not the defining album of the 1990s, and it's after Dookie, where each album just goes down in sales and popularity. Jump to Warning, which was a critical and commercial failure, even though I consider it their best work. The band was feeling washed up, as if that spark of talent they had was slowly dripping away. They could only afford one more album or so before potentially calling it quits, so they started work on their upcoming 7th album, and it was going smoothly enough. The album would have 16 full tracks and release sometime in 2003, but of course, that's not what happened. One fateful day, someone broke into the Studio 880 in Oakland and walked out of the studio with the master tapes of Cigarettes and Valentines. No security footage, no evidence, and the entire story is pretty much hearsay from what the band has told us themselves, and we can only speculate on what actually happened. If this album actually saw the light of day, American Idiot would not exist, and rock music as a whole would not be the same. Being one of the top 500 albums of all time, it's probably a good thing Cigarettes and Valentines got lost, even if it could have been great. American Idiot supposedly took 10 months to create, so how much of Cigarettes ended up onto American Idiot? Supposedly none went on American Idiot in particular, but many tracks did find their way onto future albums, mostly the trilogy and one song off their 2016 album, Revolution Radio. We don't know a lot about the tracks from Cigarettes, but a handful have been confirmed. The biggest being Youngblood off Revrad, and of course the self-titled track Cigarettes and Valentines being released off a live album. Of course, this was an entirely finished album, so there's gotta be more than 3 songs that had some inspiration / directly came off of Cigarettes that ended up onto their later work. So what are some songs that are speculated to be from Cigs, or what tracks have at least had some inspiration taken from it? Well, we know about some of the American Idiot B-sides being from the album, such as Too Much Too Soon. I have a feeling that at least some, if not more of the original tracks found their way onto the trilogy, seeing as those 3 albums were rushed, and I'm sure more than just Walk Away were a part of the 48-song mess that the trilogy became. I think it's unlikely any of these tracks ended up on the infamous Father of All, because that album was its own special thing now, wasn't it? That's pretty much all we definitely know anyway, but of course there's more to talk about in unconfirmed things. An image has been thrown around for a track list of the album, coming from the Facebook page of John Rockener. a friend to the band, and a film director. Although this still has the American Idiot cover art and is labeled B-sides, it's probably not Sigs, but it's still worth discussing. You probably can't see it well, but the tracklist from this image goes as follows: Too Much Too Soon, Shoplifter, Governator, Horseshoes and Hand Grenades, The Pedestrian, Too Young, Lights Out, Lately, Cigarettes and Valentines, End of the World, Walk Away, Broadway, Dropout, Waste Away, 19th Nervous Breakdown, and Favorite Son, being a Japan bonus. Most notably, the Green Day side project Foxborough Hot Tub seems to at least have used a couple songs from these sessions, as both Broadway and The Pedestrian both appear on the Foxborough Hot Tub's album Stop, Drop, and Roll. We can also see that these songs probably made it onto the trilogy too, such as Walk Away. Horseshoes and Hand Grenades went on to 21st Century Breakdown, American Idiot's follow-up album, and 19th Nervous Breakdown was just a Rolling Stones cover. Most of the other songs ended up being American Idiot B-sides, such as Too Much Too Soon, Shoplifter, and Governator, as well as Favorite Son being American Idiot's Japan exclusive, and being featured on the Rock Against Bush Volume 2 compilation by Fat Wreck Chords. This tracklist may be the most hotly contested thing about the album. If anything, it's due to speculation and that no one can really know if it's the true tracklist, or just American Idiot B-sides, or just a hoax. The other most hotly contested thing about Cigarettes is probably the story of what truly happened to those tapes. The story we laid out in the beginning of this video is certainly a lofty one, and if you think about it for more than 5 minutes, you begin to see how many mental gymnastics you have to do just for it to be anywhere near plausible. Taking it at face value, the band is literally telling us some random dude showed up at the studio one day, went around every single camera, alerted no guards or security offers, stole the only available copy of the master tapes and one of the biggest rock acts of all time, and just left without any trace or any motive. Kind of falls apart. The tapes never got leaked online, they've never been circulated anywhere but the Green Day Vault. They supposedly recovered the master tapes sometime later, but have also said they have no plans of releasing them. So what's a more plausible theory of what could have happened? Well, let's look at where they were in their career. Warning was a critical flop, and they were worried about even having a next album as a whole. In my opinion, what actually happened was that Green Day stole the tapes themselves and made up a story to tell the record label. Why would Green Day steal their own finished album? Well, to put it bluntly, they thought it sucked. They couldn't just scrap an album that was totally finished, the record label would never allow that. Green Day then came up with a story to tell the record label that they couldn't release it. This album would have been their most career-defining album they ever put out, making or breaking the band for the future. It had to be good, like really good. They didn't want to release another fast, punchy album and call it goodnight, they wanted to go out with a real bang. Looking at the band now, it seems silly that they would have ever had to worry about their career ending, and I don't think Green Day will be going anywhere either. At this point, they can pretty much release whatever they want and get away with it, except from the die-hard punks to call them posers, and the music snobs to say they suck. Unfortunately for both, I really doubt some 50-year-old millionaire dudes care about what they have to say. Anyway, this was an interesting story in the world of music, so I figured I'd cover it. See you later.